I knew something was wrong the moment I heard the laugh. Not the polite kind of laugh people use in meetings when the boss makes a mediocre joke. This was different, sharp, dismissive. The kind of laugh that cuts through walls and makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. I was walking past the rooftop patio during the company celebration, the one Victor Hale organized after we won the National Software Excellence Award. Warm beer, bad music, someone from sales wearing a plastic crown, calling himself the Vertex King, the usual circus. But that laugh stopped me cold. He really thinks his code won us that award. Victor's voice, clear as a bell. 5 years and he's still in the dark. I stood there, one foot on the stairwell, the other hovering over 5 years of silence. The board member beside him chuckled. Well, he's got spirit. Sure. Victor smirked. But this was always going to be about vision, not code. I didn't storm the patio. I didn't throw a drink. I just turned around, walked back down 3 flights of stairs, sat in my office for an hour staring at a wall I'd helped design but never gotten credit for building. That was the night I stopped asking for recognition. I started asking for leverage. Let me back up. I'm Nathan Cross. I was the first engineer Vertex Dynamics ever hired. Not the first employee, not the first developer, the first engineer. The one who built the machine learning compliance framework that turned a failing legal tech startup into a $520 million acquisition target. I wrote the original code base on a laptop that crashed every other Tuesday. I debugged it in parking lots, on trains, during my daughter's soccer games while pretending to watch and actually tracing memory leaks on my phone screen. I built the audit engine, the regulatory parser, the consent mechanism, the whole architecture that Vertex now paraded around like it descended from Silicon Valley heaven. And for 5 years, Victor Hale took credit for every line of it. At first I didn't mind. Early stage startup, everyone wears multiple hats. The CEO tells the story, the engineer builds the product. That's the deal. I'd been through 2 startups before this one. Both failed, both taught me the same lesson. The code doesn't matter if nobody believes in it. Victor believed in it. Or at least, he believed in selling it. But somewhere around year 3, the deal changed. Victor stopped crediting the team entirely. Press releases mentioned his vision. Investor decks quoted his strategic insight. Conference speakers invited him to talk about building AI compliance platforms. He couldn't have architected if his life depended on it. The award submission listed him as the driving force behind Vertex's breakthrough. My name appeared once, buried in an appendix as a key contributor, like I helped paint the office walls. I emailed Victor once about it, just once. He replied, "Marketing made the call, hope you understand." I understood perfectly. That was the day I started the folder. Just in case, I named it. In it went every Git log, every annotated spec, every email where they thanked me for building the system. I knew how men like Victor operated. I'd seen it before at those failed startups. The charming salesman who takes credit while the engineers eat stale pizza and ship features at 3 in the morning. I made sure to keep every legal document, draft submission, and intellectual property registration I ever touched, especially anything tied to the award. The real kicker? The patent. It lists 4 inventors. 3 of them haven't written a line of code since dial-up was a thing. The 4th was me, but only after I reminded legal that I was the one who submitted the provisional application. Felt like begging for a receipt after buying the company dinner. So yeah, I smiled when they left me off another deck. I nodded when they forgot to loop me in on client calls. I played the part, the quiet, compliant engineer, the one who knew where the bodies were buried because I buried half of them myself under layers of abstraction and encrypted audit logs. By year 5, I wasn't expecting a seat at the table. I was the table, they just didn't know it yet. But they would. The award ceremony happened on a Thursday. Victor gave the acceptance speech. He thanked the brilliant development team, like we were some undifferentiated mass of code monkeys summoned via Slackbot. I wasn't in the photo. I was in the server room, updating the legacy audit parser by hand because our CTO insisted we didn't need modern frameworks yet. That Friday, they threw the celebration on the rooftop. That was when I heard the laugh. After the rooftop incident, I went into silent mode. No more Slack brainstorms. No more whiteboard sessions, where marketing folks played ping pong nearby, like toddlers hopped up on sparkling water. No more what-if pitches handed off to managers who'd paste their names on top and call it vision. I became corporate wallpaper. Still in the room, still humming quietly in the background, but never noticed until you tried to remove me and the paint came off with it. They didn't even realize I was retreating. Victor stopped copying me on investor decks. Fine. I downloaded every single one from the shared drive anyway, tracked every revision, every slide that morphed from Nathan's compliance engine to Victor's data governance vision. The audits. I stopped flagging minor risks, let them build up like mold under drywall. Nothing legally actionable, just enough to show how dependent the system was on someone who actually knew what it did. I began exporting my development logs weekly, encrypted, saved to 2 different drives, one physical, one in a cloud account under my college roommate's name. Then I made backups of those backups, labeled innocuously. Old family photos, no one was looking. No one ever does until it's too late. Meanwhile, I began ghosting my way out of the day-to-day. They moved me off the Vertex pitch team and into technical support for future innovations. Translation, the basement of irrelevance. I smiled, nodded, took the windowless cubicle like it was beachfront property, and while they spun up new vanity features, smart contracts 2.0, AI-driven ethics, whatever that meant, I cleaned house. Dependencies mapped, authorship logs cataloged, emails with legal about award rules printed and stashed. I even had the original invoice from the certification vendor who processed our award application, signed by me, time-stamped. The title primary architect right there on the line item. Victor was busy press. Our CTO was busy plagiarizing Medium articles. I was busy knitting the noose they wouldn't see coming. One afternoon, as I was quietly labeling files like a cheerful little forensic librarian, Ryan Wells knocked on my cubicle wall. Ryan was one of the few good eggs left. Sweet, nervous, competent. One of the junior developers I'd mentored back when mentoring still meant something around here. He glanced around like he was about to pass me state secrets. "Hey," he said, "I heard from finance there's restructuring talk. You didn't hear it from me." I blinked. "Layoffs?" He nodded. "Or reorg. Big investor push coming. They're making it lean." He hesitated. "I don't think your name's on the chopping block." "I'm not worried," I said. And I wasn't. He shifted his weight, clearly wanting to say more. "You doing okay? I mean, really okay?" I smiled. "Better than you think." Then I leaned in and asked one thing. "Let me know when the legal team schedules their review of the award documents." He furrowed his brow. "For the investor deal?" "Exactly." Ryan nodded slowly. He didn't ask why. Smart man. I went back to work like nothing had happened. Like I wasn't already halfway out the door with every blueprint, signature, and clause they forgot I ever touched neatly folded into my invisible arsenal. At this point, it wasn't about credit or vindication. It was about watching them realize, far, far too late, just how much of their empire was built on the back of someone they treated like a chair with opinions. And the best part? The chair was getting ready to pull itself out. They started calling it the big one. $520 million. Enough to scale globally, rebrand the company, finally buy Victor that third vacation home he loved to show off. Just a rustic little chalet in Aspen. The energy in the office shifted overnight. Open plan chaos turned into shark smile politicking. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Everyone was a strategic thinker. And the espresso machine got service for the first time in 2 years. Me. I got demoted to ghost status with flair. Found out about the final strategy sessions from a shared calendar invite I wasn't on. Apparently, they were happening in the Innovation War Room, which was just the rebranded conference room with the broken projector and a new coat of whiteboard paint. Only leadership and key narrative contributors were allowed. When I asked, casually, if I should be looped in, Victor waved me off with a smile. "We need you focused on stability tasks, Nathan. The architecture's too high level for deep technical dives. Don't worry, we'll definitely credit your groundwork." "Groundwork," he said. "Like I laid mulch, not wrote the framework that got us here in the first place." I nodded, happy to help from the sidelines. I made myself so small they thought I disappeared, but I was very much there. Ryan fed me details. The meeting notes, the early slide decks, the whiteboard snapshots. One of the product managers accidentally uploaded a full demo script to the internal knowledge base without restricting permissions. I read every word. They were selling my architecture like it was a new cologne. Vertex compliance you can trust. Victor was everywhere. Front of the deck, front of the story, front of the staged group photo they took in the glass stairwell. I wasn't in the shot. I was the code running silently behind the camera, the elevator they rode up without noticing the cables holding it. They called the core of the system Vertex ML, pretending it was some kind of machine learning oracle summoned from the ether. In reality, it was 3 years of version control hell, custom rule interpreters, and a compromise I made with legal over data protection triggers that still gives me hives. They paraded it around like it had arrived in a golden egg from Victor's forehead, and yet in every deck, every roadmap, every glossy investor brief, they missed one thing: consent mechanism for external capital triggers tied to intellectual property origins. Why? Because I was the only one who knew it existed. Back when we submitted for the award, the one they kept parading like a prized pig, I had pushed for a clause that would bind any commercial use of the submission materials to a formal acknowledgement by the primary architect. Me. At the time, I did it to keep legal honest. Never thought I'd actually use it, until I saw them trying to spin gold from my silence. I printed out the latest deck, read it over lunch in the empty server room. The part that broke me was the vision and execution timeline slide. Victor's initials were next to every milestone, every single one. Even the pilot audit that crashed 3 times until I rewrote the core logic in a coffee shop parking lot during a snowstorm. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I smiled. Because I knew something they didn't. They could paint the walls however they wanted, rebrand the truth, rehearse the lies, sell themselves as the heroes of a journey they barely survived. But the foundation, the code, the proof, that still belonged to me. And when the time came, I'd let it all speak, loudly, legally, and with the kind of precision only a person in tech could weaponize after 5 years of being called too technical. I took a personal day, told HR I needed time for mental wellness, which was code for "I'm going to pull the pin on this grenade you idiots built a throne on." Slipped out before anyone could rope me into another mandatory team-building Slack thread about gratitude journaling. Drove 2 hours in silence with only the whir of the heater and my own pulse for company. Straight to the beige downtown building where the National Software Excellence Council kept its records like relics in a tomb. Wore jeans and a hoodie. No badge, no hint of the storm I was about to uncork. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I asked for the award submission file from 5 months ago. Company name? Virkung Dynamics Inc. Form of identification? I handed over my license and the council access code I had personally registered during the submission window. She typed something, frowned, then clicked her tongue and stood up. 10 minutes later, she returned with a binder. Heavy, smelled like toner and karmic retribution. Need a copier? Just a minute. I opened it with the same care you reserve for old photographs or unmarked explosives. It was all there. Every form, every formality, every justification for why Vertex deserved the award. Architecture diagrams, test suite summaries, flowcharts I bled out over at 3 in the morning between bug patches. But then, on page 7, my heartbeat hit a different rhythm. Primary architect. Nathan Cross, clear as daylight, not team member, not lead contributor. Primary architect. I remembered the fight I'd had with legal to include that line. How they grumbled about formatting and space. I didn't budge. They didn't care enough to push back. And now that line was the tripwire. I flipped to the last section, licensing and eligibility disclosures, and there it was, a clause so boring no executive ever reads it. Section 7.2b, subsection 3. Any future commercial investment, acquisition, or integration that explicitly references this award or relies on the intellectual property submitted, herein shall require formal written consent from the named primary architect prior to execution. Translation. They wanted to use my work to close this $520 million deal. They needed my signature. Not a nod from Victor, not a nod from the legal department. Mine. I smiled. I copied the entire file twice. Paid for certified mail to 2 addresses, one to my apartment, the other to a post office box I hadn't touched in 3 years. On the return drive, I stopped at a diner off Route 7, ordered pancakes, poured syrup with the same calm I imagined wielding in a courtroom. Back at my apartment, I placed the binder on my kitchen table like it was radioactive. Sat across from it, studied it like a bomb technician. All those years I'd wasted asking for credit. Now credit was irrelevant. I had the controls. They could charm investors, polish pitch decks, fake competence in 5 different fonts, but without the signature, they were pitching smoke. The night before the deal felt like the dress rehearsal for someone else's wedding. A party I'd planned, paid for, and decorated, only to be told I'd be working valet out back. They booked the top floor of a rooftop steakhouse, reserved for select stakeholders and strategic leads, which was code for everyone who liked the sound of their own voice. I wasn't invited, of course. Ryan was. And Ryan, good man that he is, accidentally FaceTimed me while reaching for a breadstick. "Oops," he said with a smirk. "Oops," I echoed, already screen recording. Victor was holding court again, drink in hand, shirt unbuttoned 1 notch too far, like he thought it made him visionary instead of just moist. A few venture capitalists were present, fake laughing into their whiskey. The CTO nodded so hard at every word. Victor said I was worried his neck would snap. Victor raised his glass and everyone quieted down. "I just want to say," he began, slurring around his own self-importance, "this company is finally about to cash in. 5 years, blood, sweat," and he paused for dramatic effect. "Strategy, we built this from nothing. Laughter, toasts, applause, nothing," he said again, more softly, like he was giving the eulogy for his humility. I ended the recording. The room I sat in, my apartment, small quiet plant in the window, felt a universe away from that steakhouse and the smell of overpriced ribeye. I didn't feel sad. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was surgical. I opened my laptop, logged into the award portal using my credentials, still valid, still active, downloaded the PDF again, just to be sure. Then I opened a new email and typed with the slow, steady calm of someone loading a single bullet. Subject: compliance verification, award-linked IP authorization. 2. Legal at the investor firm, CC myself. Body in advance of tomorrow's signing for the Series D agreement. Please ensure all required signatures tied to prior award submission terms are present and up to date. Specifically, those concerning the designated primary architect as listed in the National Software Excellence Council, award documentation for Vertex Dynamics Inc. Submission ID #143B. Please refer to Section 7.2b of the Licensing Eligibility Terms. Best regards, Nathan Cross, Primary Architect, Vertex Compliance Framework. I didn't bold anything. Didn't explain. Didn't ask. I just dropped the match into the kindling and clicked send. No one at Vertex noticed. Not marketing, not the CTO, not Victor. Not even Ryan, who texted me a gif of a champagne bottle popping 20 minutes later with the caption, "It's happening." But someone did notice. 32 minutes after I sent that email, I received a read receipt. 12 minutes after that, a follow-up message from an address I didn't recognize. "Thank you for the clarification. We are reviewing the documentation tonight. GD, legal counsel." That was it. No exclamation points, no emojis, just professional curiosity with a scent of urgency beneath it. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. They were reading the binder. They were seeing what I saw. They were beginning to understand that this $520 million rocket ship had no launch key without me. The house I built, the one they looted, renamed, and wallpapered with press clippings, had a deed, and it had my name on it. I closed my laptop, brushed my teeth, fed the cat. Tomorrow wasn't about asking to be in the room. Tomorrow I was the room. The boardroom looked like money had grown legs and taken a seat. Glass walls, panoramic skyline view, bottles of still and sparkling water lined up like obedient soldiers. Everyone wore navy or gray except Victor, who showed up in a cream blazer like he thought he was starring in a tech startup biopic nobody wanted. He was in rare form, grinning wide, tossing out jokes like sugar packets. Treating the signing of a $520 million investment deal was just another Friday. The CFO nodded like a bobblehead. The CTO smirked at jokes that didn't land. One of the junior associates actually brought a fidget spinner. It whirred like a warning. I sat at the far end of the table, not a guest, not a colleague. Just there, legally necessary but visually excluded. My chair didn't even match the others. Victor never looked at me, hadn't looked at me in weeks. The investor team arrived precisely on time. 3 suits, 1 general counsel, and a younger associate with eyebrows permanently arched in suspicion. They shook hands, exchanged cards, small talk floated in the air like lint. The binder came out 10 minutes in, thick, tabbed, too heavy to be ceremonial. The lawyer, mid-50s, Harvard face but Brooklyn posture, cleared his throat. We're aligned on most deal points, he said calmly, flipping to a tab near the back. Just one last item before we sign. This pertains to the intellectual property disclosure surrounding Vertex's core architecture. Victor's smile twitched. Of course, he said, all clean. Our team built the whole thing in-house. The lawyer didn't smile. This award submission from the National Software Excellence Council is listed as a key value point in your valuation narrative. Is that correct? Yes, Victor said. That one put us on the map. Excellent, the lawyer replied. He flipped to another page. We reviewed the licensing clauses. The documentation requires a final signature from the designated primary architect to authorize any tied investment use of the IP. Silence. Victor blinked. I'm sorry, the what? The primary architect, the lawyer repeated. It's in Section 7.2b, non-transferable consent. He looked around the room. So, we just need that sign-off. Victor chuckled. Right. I mean, probably our CTO or product lead. The lawyer tilted his head. No, it's listed by name. He flipped the binder around, a single page blown up, highlighted. Primary architect, Nathan Cross. Victor's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Slower this time, like a fish trying to explain away a polluted river. Wait, what? I didn't stand. Didn't clear my throat. Didn't ask for permission. I simply slid my own binder across the polished table like it was nothing more than a casual lunch order. The lawyer turned to it, opened it, scanned. Then he looked up, straight at me, and for the first time since this entire circus began, every eye in that high-rise boardroom followed toward me. I folded my hands on the table, met his gaze, calm, controlled, not smug. This wasn't gloating. It was gravity reasserting itself. The lawyer nodded once, looked back at Victor. We can't proceed without him. You could hear the silence settle like dust, the kind that doesn't move, the kind that knows it's unwelcome but dares you to sweep it. The investor's lawyer placed his pen down, not slammed, not flung, placed with a finality that only billion-dollar attorneys know how to wield. One soft sound, but it echoed through that glass and steel boardroom like a gunshot. We can't move forward, he said quietly, eyes still on me, till Mr. Cross signs. He didn't say it dramatically. He said it like a fact, like gravity. Section 7.2b requires his consent. It's non-transferable, no exceptions. The junior investor stopped scrolling on his phone. The CFO gulped like he'd swallowed a stapler. The CTO's lips parted slightly as if trying to summon a word, then closed again when he realized he had none. Just a whimper trapped in a suit. Victor looked like a man trying to remember if he'd left the oven on 3 years ago. Pale, blank, fingers twitching around a pen he hadn't earned. But he gestured in my direction without finishing the sentence. I mean, Nathan's not part of the executive team. He's not even on the signature schedule. The lawyer didn't flinch. Your documentation says otherwise. Your submission says otherwise. Your pitch says otherwise. Then he flipped a tab, held it up. Investor Slide 12, award-winning AI architecture. Direct quote, the engine of our innovation. That architecture is legally tied to his name. Without his authorization, the award becomes ineligible. The valuation becomes misstated. The deal subsequently becomes misrepresented. He paused, let it all settle. So again, we cannot proceed. All eyes turned to me. I didn't rush. I didn't stutter. I let them sit in the mess they made, paper-thin egos now soaked in panic. Victor opened his mouth to speak. I lifted my hand. Not a dramatic wave, just a small surgical interruption, enough to sever him mid-sentence without saying a word. We can talk terms, I said, voice even, deliberate, but not with him. My eyes didn't leave the investor's lawyer. If this deal is to go through, it needs clean hands and clean leadership. You could feel the tension twist across the room. Even the fidget spinner stopped. The lawyer gave a half nod. Reading between lines only people like us were trained to see. Power had shifted. The axis had tilted. Victor was no longer the sun, just a spent match looking for another box to strike against. I believe, the lawyer said, slowly turning to his team, we may need to reconvene separately, just to clarify authorizations and structure, possibly personnel. Translation, get him out or this deal dies. Victor looked around seeking rescue. From the CTO, who suddenly found his own tie fascinating. From the CFO, who had gone translucent. From the junior associate, who stared at his coffee like it held the answer. But they all knew. The room didn't revolve around him anymore. It revolved around me. Not because I screamed, not because I begged, but because I built what they took for granted. And now I held the receipt. The pen they tried to hand to Victor, it never reached him. It floated midair, waiting for me. Victor tried to recover, but the air had already turned on him. He started rambling, half-formed legal gibberish, spliced with boardroom buzzwords, like he could pivot his way out of a blood oath. "Maybe there's a way to amend the documents," he offered, voice high and thin. "Like a supplemental declaration or something, some kind of post-signature authorization." The investor's lawyer didn't even look up from his binder. "That," he said flatly, "voids the award eligibility, which would materially alter your valuation, which would derail this deal." It was the corporate equivalent of a guillotine. No drama, just a clean drop. Victor fell back into his chair, quiet now. No more toasts, no more grins. Just a man realizing the company he thought he led was built on scaffolding he never understood. Across the table, the lead investor finally spoke. Her voice was calm, precise, like a surgeon preparing for a necessary incision. "Well then," she said, turning to her legal team, "we'll need to revise the board structure immediately. This deal doesn't move forward with internal instability." Translation. Victor was done. A formality wrapped in a power move. She looked at me. "Mr. Cross, will you be joining us on the oversight board?" I let the silence stretch just long enough for Victor to hear it echo. "Yes," I said, "but my conditions are non-negotiable." She nodded. One of the lawyers pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. An addendum. Revised oversight structure effective immediately. CEO resignation accepted. His name was crossed out with surgical finality. The pen slid across the table toward me. I read every word, I always do. Then I signed, slowly, precisely, like I was putting the final period at the end of a sentence he never learned to read. The air in the room shifted. Not loud, not triumphant, just different. Like when a storm passes and everything is clearer because of it. The lawyers began collecting their materials. The CFO exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes. The new oversight members began introducing themselves to me, but I only half listened. My focus was on the man shrinking in his seat across from me, watching everything he'd built on lies and borrowed credit come apart one quiet page at a time. I stood, slid the signed addendum back into the center of the table, and tucked my binder under my arm. As I turned to leave, I paused. Just for a moment met Victor's eyes. He looked hollow, like someone had scooped out his legacy with a soup spoon, and then I said it soft, clear, no venom, just truth. 5 years in the dark, Victor. I just wanted you to think I was. Then I walked out, no door slam, no applause. Just the sound of my shoes tapping across a floor that finally echoed my name.